Hello, all you beautiful beings, and welcome to the show. I'm Lane Smith Brown, and this is episode number 30 of the Unleash Your Life podcast. And today I want to discuss a theme I've had in my life for a really long time. I've made huge progress on this over the years, but a dream last night let me know it's still lurking in the background. And it has left me wondering where I'm still justifying my existence. Stick with me. I'd be surprised if you didn't see a little bit of yourself in this one. This is the Unleash Your Life podcast, where you're going to learn to rewild yourself. I'm your host, Lane Smith Brown, and I'm a best-selling author and rewilding guide. And over the last 20 years, I've been guiding women back to their truest selves. You see, you were born wild with all the wisdom you will ever need to navigate your life in a beautiful and powerful way. Then, just like everyone else on the planet, you got tamed as you fell under the power and influence of others who were also tamed. All that taming you got as a kid has you convinced you are less powerful than you really are. I call all of that unconscious programming power leaks. And on this show, you're going to discover yours, and then you're going to choose to plug them so you can get back to the wild, wise, and powerful being that you are. So grab a coffee, glass of wine, or a favorite friend, or all three, and let's talk about what living your wild self can mean for you. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Welcome to the repeaters and the newbies. I'm glad to have the company. Thanks for showing up. Well, if you've been listening for any length of time, you've heard I'm still working on myself after decades of doing just that. This work doesn't really ever get done. It's just how it all works. Life does get sweeter, though, as a result of doing the work. And that incentive always outweighs the pain for me. Well, eventually, that is. I wonder if you've experienced this too. There's certain learned behaviors that are stickier than some, and that's what I want to discuss today. If we've learned to be self-sabotaging, which I'd venture to say 99.5% of us have, then we've got some messaging that's gone deep into every subconscious crag, crack, or crevice it could find. It can be in money, love, relationships, sex, self-value, and on and on. Now, just a note on self-sabotage. Not many of us self-sabotage on purpose, but I suppose some do. Most of us have a belief playing in the background of our subconscious mind that our ego needs to hang on to, in its attempt to keep us in the familiar feelings. The feelings that our ego believes we enjoy. I woke up from a dream this morning that let me know my old feelings of needing to justify my existence were running roughshod through my subconscious mind and anxious to be acknowledged and let go of. In the dream, I'm working for an employer I had back in my 20s. The boss called me in and demanded to know what I had been doing with all of my time. She wanted proof that it was time well spent. Most of the dream, I'm in my office in a state of panic because I can't come up with any proof. I'm madly going through piles of paper that are laying on every horizontal surface, and I'm staring at a million sticky notes covering every vertical surface, and I can't find any proof that I have done anything. There is no empirical data to prove I've done anything worthwhile with my time. I cannot justify my existence. What a horrible way to wake up, eh? But there was such a good nugget in there for me in all of this, so I'm going to get to that in a minute. How many of you grew up in homes where there was an expectation of certain behavior in order to get validated? If you did something in a specific way, you got the approval or love or acceptance you so desired. How many of you came from a place with rules, some declared, but mostly unwritten rules. Unwritten and constantly changing, so you never really understood how to win the game. You were constantly looking for signs of approval on the faces of those who raised you, for clues. I had a lot of that growing up. There were two things playing out for me that played into my sense of value. Silence was the most important quality in our house. My dad needed silence all the time. My dad was the most important person in our family, so my dad got what he wanted. I couldn't be childlike or silly at the dinner table. I needed to be quiet. The adults could talk, of course, and if I wanted to be part of that conversation, I needed to be damn sure that what I said would actually contribute in a meaningful way to the conversation. It's a lot of pressure for a little kid. There was zero tolerance for childish antics and silliness. Perhaps you can identify, and perhaps you had a completely different set of expectations put on you, or none at all, which can also mess with your sense of self, but that's for another day. The other conditioning around contribution I received is deep-seated in generation upon generation of German ancestry on both sides. To be a contributor to the family and society as a whole, we need to produce. And that production should be done in the most efficient way and done exceptionally well. Wasting time was the enemy. And everything that wasn't producing tangible results was a waste of energy. So you can see how my early conditioning was all around justifying my own existence. Did you have a version of that? What did you have to do or not do to get love, kindness, a sense of belonging and acceptance? Anything come to mind? I know people who weren't allowed to show anger or disappointment or pain. Don't think that won't mess you up. Remember, this isn't about blame. Disconnected people raising kids do some messed up stuff, completely unintentionally. The most important thing to hold on to is that their rules and behavior do not mean there was anything wrong with you or me. That stuff was about them. And we can get past this conditioning. So just hold on. I'd be willing to bet you've got some version of the programming I'm talking about. If it wasn't directly from your caregivers, it was from your society, religion, or your culture. Women have been conditioned to justify their worth for generations upon generations. And in many settings, we still don't get paid the same as men for the same work, because somehow our work is still worth less than a man's. Gee, do you think that plays into a need to justify our worth? It's 2021, and we're still having that conversation, and it still blows my mind. There are millions of women who have no right to safety or autonomy because that entitlement is not justified in their home, their country, or their culture. I doubt there's a person of color listening anywhere in the world who hasn't felt the need to justify their existence in some way, shape, or form, trying to contort themselves for a paycheck or entry into some level of acceptance into a group dominated by white people. Those things are changing, but way too slow for my tastes, and even more so for those on the short end of both those sticks. So what does the legacy of growing up feeling like you need to justify your existence leave in your body? Well, I was curious. To be honest, I had the dream last night because of the research I did yesterday that woke me up to something that I was going to share in a bit. Here's a tidbit to keep in your back pocket, though. When we sincerely desire to undo our conditioning, to stop self-sabotaging, the universe is excited and it throws us all kinds of clues in our direction. If were willing to notice them. And I was getting clues from all over the place. All right, let's lay out really plainly what's going on in your subconscious mind. You want to change your unhealthy programming. Here's what's happening in the background. The ego part of you is sweating because this means you're going out of the area it believes is your zone of safety, i.e., only things you've been doing forever. So it's throwing every lame excuse in your path to keep you from moving forward. The collective consciousness part of you is thrilled with your desire to explore and try something new because it knows it will get you the peace and freedom you seek. As much unhealthy programming as you may have, and us unwilling to let go of that unhealthy programming as your ego is, the collective consciousness out there is super interested in your evolving. So when you ask, it comes at you in full force. And that can be a bit overwhelming at the beginning, but it's worth getting used to. 2 days ago, one of my mentors had a guest lecturer discussing self-care and self-soothing. She mentioned the polyvagal theory in part of her presentation, and I'd never heard of that before, or I'd forgotten. But this time, it came at me like a bolt of electricity. I wrote it down because I knew there was something in it for me. Yesterday, I popped over to YouTube and typed it in. I went down a little rabbit hole and found myself on Irene Lyon's channel. That's Irene, I-R-E-N-E, and Lyon, L-Y-O-N, if you're curious. This woman was such a clear communicator, and when I find clear communicators, I love to pass it on. So pop over to her channel. I'm going to give you a very short explanation of what I learned from her. But before that, I'm going to tell you how my need to justify my existence has played out for me. I suspect that a few of you are going to say, oh goodness, that's why I do that. So in a word, I'd say my kidhood home life was serious. Although I had siblings, they were a lot older than me. And by the time I was 9, every one of them was living away from our home. So I was left alone in a big house with my parents until I was sent to boarding school at 16. Now, you know from listening that my parents discouraged my relationships with neighbors because those kids did not come from the kind of religious home that my parents thought appropriate. So we're now at serious and lonely to describe those early years for me. Well, to be honest, that would have described me quite well until I was nearly 30. Like many people, I don't have a lot of memories around play or connection. Do you have good, solid memories of a playful, carefree childhood? Being read stories at night, parents asking how your day was, having sleepovers or going to camp? I hope you did. I really, really hope you did. But some of you didn't, and it's left a mark. You see, we learn about ourselves and the world around us through play. We're designed that way, and I'll show you how in a bit. Just to get us all in the same place, though, let me ask you this. Did you have anything happen to you before the age of, let's say, 16, that now registers as trauma? It could have been verbal, physical, or sexual abuse. It could have been the death of someone important to you. It could be a feeling of being isolated. The legacy of trauma is entirely personal, and you don't need to explain it to anyone. If what you experienced left you feeling all alone, it affected how you navigate your life. All right, so here we go. Perhaps you've heard of the autonomic nervous system. We all have one, and part of its function is to keep our body operating so we don't have to give any thought to how we're going to keep our heart beating or what we're going to have to remember to do in order to lift ourselves off the couch to go grab a cup of coffee or a snack. All those internal functions, for most of us, happen flawlessly due to our autonomic nervous system running in the background. Now, bear in mind, I watched a 15-minute video once and I took notes, but I'm not talking as an expert here. I am simply trying to repeat back what I took in. In the simplest terms, the autonomic nervous system is a series of complex nerves moving throughout our body. It's responsible for sending messages throughout our whole body, and it's an intricate, sensitive, and highly complex internal communication system. Now, this system of nerves is divided into two branches, parasympathetic and sympathetic. The sympathetic branch is responsible for mobilization. I'm not going to talk about that here. For this show, I'm going to focus only on the parasympathetic branch. Now, the parasympathetic system is divided into two areas, immobilization and rest digest. Okay, you got that? Immobilization and rest digest. In simple terms, immobilization is high beta experiences like shock and trauma, being in a state of constant confusion or danger or agitation, any kind of intense vulnerability. Think shame, blame, confusion, fear, disappointment. Got it? Rest digest is calmer. It's peaceful. This is where we make connections with ourselves and others. This is where we learn how to engage with others. This is where we learn we are safe. This is where we learn we are enough. As the name indicates, it's about a resting state or a digestive state, a taking in state, where we have time to take in what we're experiencing so it gets to nourish us and make us more whole. Make sense? If the trauma we experienced was never talked about or there was no attempts to correct the impression, it continues to play in the background unresolved. Immobilization was a state to be experienced for super brief periods of time. Rest digest is the state we should have experienced for the majority of the time. The rest digest portion of our autonomic nervous system is developed when caregivers hold us when we're babies. They coo at us. They are tender in their tone. They smile at us and get excited when we smile back or accomplish anything at all. Rest digest develops how we learn to engage with others. We develop the give and take of a conversation, of contributing to the whole. It is a significant influence in how we learn to view ourselves. If the majority of our childhoods were spent in a state of play, then our sense of self will be quite developed compared to someone who did not have that reinforced. Are you with me? Now, this is me, not Irene, but what I heard from her is informing this quite a bit. I can safely say that I was raised in the immobilization branch with dips into rest and digest state. That was the result of being raised by parents who were disconnected from themselves, given over to a belief system and a heritage that said that work is the only thing that brings value to a life. I know there's more of you like me. And if this isn't you, you know people who are raised this way. So hopefully this will give you the skills to understand them a little bit better. What do you think the effects are on your nervous system of having lived a life of stress, anger, judgment, lack, panic, frustration, shame, all those really unfulfilling type emotions? What would be the effect if all those feelings were directed towards yourself? Well, it looks and feels like this. You're angry at you. You're judging you. You're frustrated with you. You're ashamed of you. You make unresolved or confusing feelings about you. You feel like you are not enough. You are not safe. You cannot let your guard down. And then you add to that, you deserve to feel that way. Wow, that's a lot to take in at such a tender age, no? These are the messages many of us have rolling around in our ego minds. I should feel guilty when I do something for myself. I should feel guilt or shame if I spend money on myself. I should feel guilt or shame if I want time for myself. I should feel guilt or shame if I watch soap operas while eating bonbons in the afternoons. I should feel guilt or shame reading a juicy novel or calling in sick when I just need a day in bed with nothing to do. Another version of all that nattering is you don't deserve to have freedom. You don't deserve to have love. You don't deserve to have rest. You don't deserve to have money. You don't deserve things to be easy. You don't deserve to feel peaceful. And you certainly don't deserve to play. On a logical level, you may disagree with every one of those statements. But if the rest digest portion of your parasympathetic nervous system was not fully developed, you have some self-sabotaging programming that needs to be changed, whether you're willing to recognize it or not. So tell me, if your energetic signature is guilt or anything that smacks of undeservability, yep, I made that word up. How do your dreams end up coming true? How do things move into your life if you are subconsciously pushing them away with these types of power leaks? I've done a fair bit of work in regards to connection and engagement with others, when I feel safe, that is. It's still a lot more work if I'm feeling insecure or threatened in some way. That happens less and less, but it still can happen. Our need to be liked is an ancient need based on wanting to survive. The part of me that needs to catch up in order to let go of my self-sabotaging behavior is the lightness that comes from learning how to play, how to not take everything so seriously, how to give myself a break and enjoy doing nothing. And enjoy doing nothing? What? That's blasphemous. How will I get approval if I've caught doing nothing? Quick, let's think of something easy, but still has an end result that shows I've accomplished something with my time. Let me think. I like cooking, so I'll enjoy cooking something so that I can put something in the freezer. I enjoy gardening, so I'll go water the plants or clean up the shed. I like reading, so I'll make sure I'm reading something that challenges me or gets me thinking. I like being outside, so let's see. I'll go for a walk, but I'll make it about doing it as quickly as I possibly can in order to better the time I had yesterday. So I can enjoy myself, but there's something important that I accomplished as well. I don't tick all those boxes anymore, but I swear I have ticked every single one of them at one point in my life. Always trying to justify my experience. Trying to make every action count for something. And often, that was not a choice. It was an instinctual response to being in a primal panic state about something that is only a figment of my imagination. Imagine making decisions only from past experiences, real or imagined. No room for new information to get in. No room for vision and imagining. No opportunity for growth and change. No thoughts that I am a different person now than I was then. Therefore, the end result could be something different too. No room for learning from something that didn't go exactly as planned the first time, but was still a pile of fun. And you picked up some good info along the way, and you learned more about yourself. When we do the work we're doing here, it helps to develop different tools to access where the unchosen, unfiltered, unchallenged unconscious beliefs are still affecting our decisions, and our self-worth. This information floating around in our subconscious mind dictates what we think our opportunities are, what we believe our rights are, what our belief or what we believe our abilities are, our strengths and our weaknesses, what we're entitled to. The most most deeply, how we feel about ourselves at the basest level. If we haven't chosen those beliefs, we are living from someone else's opinions about us, someone else's stories about us, someone else's evaluations about us. So what are the stories you're telling yourself about yourself? Are you worthy of love? Are you worthy of happiness? Are you worthy of rest? Are you worthy of connection? Are you worthy of abundance? Are you worthy of understanding that you, just as you are, without any improvements whatsoever, you are enough? Our existence does not require justification. Our desire for rest and play does not require justification. Our desire for anything that we hold valuable does not require justification. And if you have people in your life that dissuade you from pursuing what you think is valuable and what you want to experience, it's time to find different people. More importantly, it's time that you learn to fill up you, like I'm learning to fill up me. How will you and I show ourselves love this week? How will you and I show ourselves happiness this week? How will you and I show ourselves rest this week? How will you and I show ourselves abundance this week? And how will you and I show ourselves peace this week? What will it take for you and me to fully embrace the knowledge that we are enough just as we are? And if and when we choose to have more, we can let go of more conditioning to prepare ourselves for that journey. And that will come on the heels of my new word, deservability. All right, women. You and me are going to develop the rest digest branch of our parasympathetic nervous system by being in the moment, taking time for ourselves, turning up the tunes and dancing, getting on a trampoline and bouncing, getting lost in our imagination, escaping into a good show or a good book, taking a walk with no end time and a nice meandering pace. Does any of that call you? This always bears repeating. Many of us were raised by disconnected people, and that disconnection went back generations. In listening to this, you can end that legacy, both energetically and physically, for the generations to come. And that has nothing to do with having kids or not. We can lead by example in so many ways. At work, on a committee, in the boardroom, at the gym, or while we volunteer. We can start to lead from the place that says, I am here. And just me being here means I am enough. And just by being here means you are enough. Neither of us have to justify our existence in any way. And you know what? When you feel this way about your own existence, you increase the odds of you understanding that everyone else around you deserves to be here too. They deserve to have all the dreams, rights, and entitlements that you desire. This is how the world comes together. and heals from all the division we are currently experiencing. It is possible to be unique without being more than or less than anyone else. Imagine a world of people all connected to their hearts, standing in their own power and offering grace to themselves and those around them. If we don't dream it, sisters, it will never happen. So how about we dream this for ourselves and the world around us? So be aware of how you're feeling as you take this on. Meditate for the good feeling that meditation brings. Exercise for the good feeling that exercise brings. Read a book for the good feeling it brings to read a book. Do all kinds of stuff for the good feeling that that activity gives you. No need to tick a box of accomplishment or justify the action in any way. Just feed yourself things that feel like rest. And if shame or judgment come up, put a smile on your face and say to that nasty little voice in your head, move on. I'm not listening to you anymore. There's no room for shame, blame, or judgment in our hearts. It's an incompatible environment for anything that takes us away from believing in ourselves. You're meant to be here, beautiful, and you're meant to do the work that will get you believing that to the core of your being. We're building a community that is going to share that transformation with the world, and we're just getting started. That's it for this one, ladies. I suspect this topic will come up again the more we uncover ways to let our power leaks run amok. But the good part is we can always offer ourselves grace through the process. Thanks for being here. I love that you stayed. Meet me back here for another chat next time. Until then, stay weird, stay curious, and keep popping your corks or plugging your power leaks, whichever analogy floats your boat. And again, if that reference was lost on you, go back to episode 9 and 10 for a little more information. Ta for now. Well, I hope this show rocked your world a little bit. If you want additional resources, check out the links in the show notes or at lanesmithbrown.com. And before you go, please subscribe to this podcast. It's how we get these tools into the world. And this world needs more wild women standing in their authentic power. Do that for me, will ya? Thank you.